UK Prime Minister Theresa May, they're outlining the journey so far with Brexit. Says the journey had been very difficult. And she says, quote, "I have done my best." And she also went to say that everything I could do, I have done to reach a deal that was agreed with Brussels. She says, "I have tried 3 times, but those best efforts have failed to produce a deal of Brexit." So she is announcing she'll be stepping down as the head of the Conservative Party and as the Prime Minister on June the 7th. She says a new party leader will then be allowed to come on board and lead the Brexit effort forward. There have been several timelines set for the UK to exit the European Union. It's been very difficult, 2 to 3 years, this deal, since the referendum was done under the former Prime Minister. And then she was concluding that, yes, he will be leaving on June the 7th as the UK Prime Minister, definitely the second female Prime Minister, but she also says definitely not the last, according to her. So she says she owes everyone a whole lot of gratitude for the tenure she spent. And she says she, of course, Her Majesty, the Queen, has been briefed about her intention to leave number 10 Downing Street. So it's been a very big day. How is the market taking that? It's still early to say. We're just into the first 3 hours of trading on the London Stock Exchange. Right now, the FTSE 100 is trading green alongside other European stock exchanges. The German DAX is down, is up about 1%. The CAC 40, that's the top 40 companies on the French market in Paris, about 1%, also in the green territory. The FTSE MIB, that's the Italian bourse, is up 1.42%, beating the rest of the European bourses this morning. The IBEX 35, that's the Spanish top 35 companies, 0.90% in the green, and the broader Stocks 600 index, 0.75%. 3/4 also in green territory. We're checking these numbers for you right now. The markets are expected to react to the announcement by the PM, Theresa May. But of course, perhaps the market, the UK market and the European markets had factored in or had priced in the likelihood that Theresa May will exit office, exit number 10 Downing Street, as the Brexit deal with Europe gets a lot messier and the political brickbat is continuing. Where do we have the pound right now? 0.16% at 1.2677 against the US dollar. So let's talk to one of our correspondents from our London studios, live to us, Simon Pusey. Good morning, coming here. This is a very big day for the UK. Can you give us some of the highlights once again from Prime Minister Theresa May's speech and what you think everyone will make out of this perhaps expected notice of departure from number 10 Downing Street? Simon.
Yeah, good morning, Bosun. I think we were all expecting Theresa May to obviously announce the timing of her departure. I think the biggest surprise from her speech just then was just how emotional she was. You saw at the end of her speech her starting to lose her calm. It's very unlike Theresa May, who's always represented as sort of very cold and calm and collected and reasoned, and she was beginning to cry at the end of that speech, just about kept it together until the end of it. It shows just how much this really means to her, and that she is really, this whole Brexit fiasco has not been of her making, and she's really done her best. And she's taken that vote back 3 times. It's been voted down 3 times. She was going for a 4th time, but it was clear that it was going to be voted down again. And you can tell just how hard and how much it meant to her, how hard she'd been trying to find a breakthrough. In terms of the markets, well, both the pound and, as you said, the FTSEs, were all up today. It's going to be interesting to see how they react to her announcement. It's slightly interesting that she's named that date as the 7th of June to go. It means she's not going to have Donald Trump's state visit. A lot of people thought she'd wait till more like the 12th of June to announce her departure, until after that visit had happened. But I think one of the main takeaways from that speech that we just heard was her honesty and really her genuine, heartfelt remorse that she couldn't deliver Brexit, as she kept saying that she would. It wasn't something that she'd done. Obviously, David Cameron, the former Prime Minister, resigned in June 2016. 2016 after the Brexit vote. She took up her post in July 2016, and her main remit really was to deliver Brexit, and she hasn't been able to do that. So I think what you saw there from her speech was a very emotional Theresa May, someone we haven't seen before, really with a lot of remorse that she couldn't deliver on Brexit, that vote that happened in 2016.
Yes, Simon, let's take this back a little bit in the last 3 years, how the market had been reacting to the entire Brexit brickbat, one step forward, two steps backward, with Brussels, companies living in the UK trying to find new headquarters, banks and other financial institutions, the UK market, investors thinking what they should do with those assets, financial assets they're trading on the UK, on the London Stock Exchange and all of that. It's been a very tough deal. UK has lost so much in terms of this entire Brexit, a deal, as it were, not yet even a deal.
It's interesting who you speak to and which side you're coming from, Bosun. Each side will argue the opposite. You'll have Remainers saying, you know, this is a tragedy. Just look at the pound; it's been crashing. It's an all-time low almost for 2019. And then you'll have the Leavers who've said it's not as bad as all the fearmongers have said. So, for example, the FTSE has remained fairly strong. The London Stock Exchange, in fact, has been one of the strongest markets, equity markets there's been, one of the most stable. So it depends where you look at. You've obviously had big companies, big deals not happening. Trade deals that were promised by the government would be done by March this year haven't been done, with Japan, for example. And you've seen, as you said, banks moving their headquarters. You've had Deutsche Bank talking about going to Frankfurt. And I think the fears around that were always there. I don't think they've quite come true like was predicted. But it's been an interesting ride since 2016 and that Brexit vote. For example, another positive has been that unemployment here is at a record low. Wages have been increasing week on week since that Brexit vote. So you've got two sides to the argument, really. You've had the pound has been tumbling ever since, really, but then you've got unemployment figures that are generally strong. You've got wages that are generally strong. You've got headquarters of banks changing. Law firms have been pulling out of London as well. You've had big deals that haven't gone through as a result. But then you've had a few deals that have been announced in recent months that have been a surprise. So it's really the uncertainty that has always been the issue, and certainly for Theresa May and the markets. For example, the pound in the last few weeks, the FTSE and the markets have been really looking at whether Theresa May could get an agreement with the Labour Party, and that's why things have been relatively stable. The pound then continues to slip on every announcement that no, a deal hasn't been done. I think the main thing people are worried about is if we leave the EU without a deal, and then things like the pound could slip by 10%, people are saying. The opposite is true, is if we can get a deal, then the pound might go up in terms of 10%. So I think it's the uncertainty, really, that's been the real killer for things like, you know, businesses and investment, the market, the pound, really that uncertainty. And that's what Theresa May, I think, has been trying to resolve. She's been trying to get a deal through. I think a lot of people opposing her will say she's been too stubborn with her red lines. Right from the start, she drew these red lines which said, this is what we want, and
Simon,
you know, she hasn't been able to do that.
Some of the images there out of London this morning were live from our London studios to you on that. Simon Pusey is standing by Theresa May. Says she's living down the street. And so that's part of these. But so these are some of the images you're seeing there out of London today. A very big Friday. This will be all over the marketplace. And of course, the political circuits over the weekend until next week. This is being watched also very closely by Brussels. So later this afternoon, we'll find out how the markets from the Frankfurt Stock Exchange is taking Theresa May's announcement of putting in her best. She says she has briefed the Majesty, the Queen, about her intention to depart on the 7th of June. So she's one of the big casualty of the referendum about 3 years ago by UK to leave the European Union. It's cost the markets and the economy. But as you already heard from Simon Pusey earlier, it depends on who you're talking to. But if you talk to the ordinary man on the street in the city of London, you will get some reactions. So let's get Simon Pusey to talk to us and wrap up the show for us on this very big day out of London. Thank you, Simon. Let's wrap up the conversation from here. I can see that the pound is not backing down on Theresa May's resignation, neither the FTSE.
Yeah, hi, Bosun. Actually, just after the resignation was announced, or the date of the resignation, the pound rose sharply. The pound was up 0.21% on the news that she had set the date of June the 7th for her resignation. The FTSE also saw a bounce a few minutes ago. It was up 0.68% on the news. And as you mentioned there, all eyes will now turn to who will be her successor. Investors and the markets will all react well in the short term to knowing when Theresa May will step down. They'll have certainty of knowing that she's no longer going to be the leader of the Conservatives or the Prime Minister, but they will want to know whether her successor will want a tougher divorce deal. And remember, the EU has said it will not renegotiate the withdrawal treaty that it sealed in November with Theresa May. So we are likely to see lots more turmoil in the markets and in the pound to come. You know, if it's going to be a Brexiteer and someone who wants to leave without a deal, then it looks like the markets, the pound will plunge. If it's going to be someone slightly more moderate, then the markets might be more stable. In a line in her speech, by the way, Bosun, she described the kind of Tory party she wanted. She wanted a decent, moderate and patriotic party. Was that a warning to her successor to not be too extreme, to compromise and find a way for a deal? We'll only find out when that successor is voted in the next few weeks.
Yes, so but if we take this to the straight, Simon, you live in London, so you work and live in London in the UK, so I'm sure you're the man on the street. You hear these conversations going on. How do you think the folks on Market Street will be reacting to Theresa May's announcement of departure?
You know me, Bosun, always chatting to people on the streets about this. I'd say that, well, we've had some reaction from business. So we've had the head of the British Chambers of Commerce, who's referred to the Brexit deadline. They said any leadership contest must be swift and follow urgently by a clear plan to break the impasse. The clock is still ticking down to the 31st of October, regardless of who is in Downing Street. So I think if you're talking about business leaders and businesses here in London and the UK, then they just want to know what's going on. And I think that's probably what the man on the street wants. They just want something to happen. And the kind of feeling is that in Westminster, there's a lot of bickering, there's a lot of politics involved. And one way or the other, they want this to get on with things. You've obviously got the side, the Remainers, and you've got a sort of growing body of people that don't want Brexit to happen at all. And then you've got the other side, the Brexit party is supposed to do very well in these European elections, led by Nigel Farage, who want Brexit to happen, and they want a hard Brexit. They want us to leave the EU, and a lot of them without a deal. I think in terms of business, in terms of investors and markets, small businesses here, it's just important to know what's going to happen, and when we leave the EU, what are the rights and regulations going to be for people like tourists who are coming into the country, tourists who are leaving to go to other countries, for things like trade, tariffs. That's what's really stemming the uncertainty. So I think for the people on the street, they just want to know who's going to be the next Prime Minister and what their policies are going to be. And really, you know, are we going to get a deal or not?
Okay, thank you so much, Simon. It's going to be a very busy day for you out of our London studios today, covering this very big political, economic, and market story. Stand by, we'll be back with you at 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm sure you have other programming here on the channel to talk to today on this very big story. Thank you so much for being here on Business Morning. Simon Pusey, Channels TV business correspondent out of our London studios. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you on Monday, bright and early. Have a great weekend.